Leaky language is the language that we use that gives away our power, that leaks away our power. And it's things like could I just, right? Things like, could I possibly? Things like, it's probably not a great idea, but.
Yeah, yes, let's slow this part down. Yeah, right. Like, what would inspire someone? Let's get into the psychology of this. What would inspire someone? See that there it is right here. It's like, it may not be a good idea, but there's a second one right there, right? Like it says, but no,
sorry is another big one. Sorry to suggest this.
Yeah. So let's get to that.
Sorry to interrupt.
I definitely want to talk about this, the whole sorry thing. But like, what would inspire someone, even if it seems obvious here in the context of this conversation, to preface an idea or comment with that leak, with that power leak preface sentence?
That they're caretaking the other person and wanting to dilute it so it doesn't show up as too much of a challenge.
Most of us never learned how to train our brains, which is why most of us needlessly settle, struggle, and worse, suffer. My name is Chris Doris, and I want to make brain training mainstream. This is my series, Tough Talks, Conversations on Mental Toughness. I'm interviewing badasses from all walks of life on what mental toughness means to them and their unique approaches to strengthening their minds. Hey everybody, welcome back to Tough Talks, Conversations on Mental Toughness. I am your host, Chris Doris, and before I get to introducing our guest today to you, I wanted to remind you that if you're not receiving my daily dose, mental toughness tips in 30 seconds or less, this is the book of it, but if you're not getting those messages in your inbox at 6 a.m. wherever you are in the world, and if you're not getting notifications of my new blog posts, which come out every Tuesday, and of course, if you're not getting notifications of when these new Tough Talks podcast episodes are going live via email, then let's fix that. And you can do all that in one click. You go to christopherdoris.com/lists, LISTS. And there you go. Enter your name, email, and click, and problem solved. So also, if you're digging these podcasts, something that would be really helpful for us would be to, share it with those who you think would also enjoy it. Click like or wherever you're seeing it. Maybe do a review or a rating or whatever the hell else you can do with these things, because the mission is simple for me. I want to reach as many people as I can. I want to serve as many people as I can, and that stuff's really helpful. So thanks for that. Now, our guest today, her name is Helen Appleby. And Helen is a New York City-based executive coach with a strong track record of leadership and commercial success. Prior to becoming a full-time coach, Helen was a VP and global business leader for GlaxoSmithKline, where she led the $1 billion respiratory health business in consumer healthcare. Her career at GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, and Unilever spanned 6 countries, and she lived and worked in Canada, the UK, Cyprus, Dubai, Malaysia, and the United States. When she was a little girl, her dad taught her that girls can do anything boys can do, and she believed him, but he didn't tell her that at work she would often be the only woman in the room, that she would struggle. She would struggle to be seen and heard and not interrupted in meetings. He didn't tell her that she'd find conflict at work difficult because she took it so personally and would cry silently in the bathroom. That she wouldn't know how to ask for the mentorship that she needed from the senior, mostly men, around her, or that once she had children, she would always feel like she left work too early and got home too late, even though she lived close to work. She thinks he didn't tell me any of that because he didn't know, because he was a man. So through her career, she went on all the courses that 2 big companies center on. Those courses taught her a lot, but they didn't teach her what she really needed to know to navigate her leadership journey as a woman. She eventually figured out how to navigate effectively and how to do both her job and her other job at home, but it took her years. Too long. which is why now she teaches and coaches the unwritten rules of women's leadership. It's what she wishes she had known earlier in her career, and she wants it to be different for you and for all of your daughters. Personally, she's a mother, a terrible cook, an average yogi, and a fabulous shopper. Professionally, she's a global business leader turned executive coach, a women's leadership trainer, and a podcaster. Professionally, she has run a billion-dollar business, lived and worked in 6 countries, helped hundreds of women navigate their version of success at work. And right now she's focused on sharing her book, which we will get to. I got a lot to say about this amazing book. The book, of course, entitled The Unwritten Rules of Women's Leadership. Step into your power, write your own rules, and succeed in your career. And sharing her course to help other women succeed. We'll talk about her course that you can sign up for right now. And building a sisterhood of successful women who will help other women rise. All right, let's go find her. She's here waiting for us. Where are you, Helen? And there she is, Helen Appleby.
Hey,
what's up, my friend?
Hello, my love.
So great to see you. I've been really looking forward to this.
Me too.
Yeah, well,
Absolutely.
I got to tell you, the last couple days have been an incredible research experience for me. And I want to just say thank you. And I mean this absolutely sincerely. And let me create a context for you on it. You know our mutual dear friend, Devin Bandison, who is also a former Tough Talks guest and who will actually be here in this office in 3 days for another interview. He facilitated recently, this past year, a series of conversations on racism and becoming conscious of that. It was entitled Co-Creating the Bridge, like bridging the gap between races, right? And as a privileged white man, I learned a whole lot about myself. And it was very, very humbling. Like, it was really humbling to the point where I wept because I learned so much about myself that I didn't like stuff that I had learned, like learned racism. Well, I had a similar experience the last couple of days because of you. And I learned, and I was actually talking, I had a workout this morning with my trainer, who's a very conscious man, Billy Woodmansey, who's another actual former Tough Talks guest. And we were talking about you and the experience that I had, which is really learning, about my own learned bias and gender bias. And as I was reading through all the chapters and all of your hundreds of just great, nuggets of golden advice for women, but not just for women, for the men too, I was learning how I participate in some of this shit, and I don't realize it. So I just want to say humbly thank you for helping raise my own consciousness to this being like, well, I don't know let me let you say this. What is the this that I'm describing? Because your language is going to be way better than mine.
This, Chris, thank you, by the way, for your allyship and your willingness to dig in and read and read all the way to chapter 11, which is the unwritten rules for men.
Right, so, which we have to finish with.
Will do. Yes. So the unwritten rules is all the stuff I wish I'd learned earlier in my career. Right. So I have a extensive global corporate career, and which
sure do.
Started really from my dad telling me that girls can do anything that boys can do. And then, to be honest, finding it was not quite as straightforward as he told me. And that, I'd struggled in places. There were places that I didn't, and they all vary, but there were certain things like, getting visible and getting the mentors that I needed and balancing, motherhood and work and the guilt that goes with that. That I wish I'd learned more, right? And I went on all the courses that the 2 really big companies that I worked for sent me on. And I just felt in the end, there was more that I still wish I'd known. So that became the journey of, how do I reach back and make it better for the women that are coming behind us, and for many of our daughters.
You articulated that precisely in the book. You said it was the last page before the first section 2. It says, I finally broke through, but it could have been easier, which is why I've written the book that I needed to read back then for you now, which I thought was pretty, So the book, and this just came out a couple months ago.
End of last year.
December 2020. So the Unwritten Rules of Women's Leadership. Step into your power, write your own rules, and succeed in your career. Let's just jump right in. I did something yesterday that I've never done in the history of the Tough Talks podcast before, which is I reached out to the guest in advance to say, help, because I couldn't narrow it down. Look, I've got pages of goddamn notes over here. Now I'm like, Jesus, what I'm telling you're killing me. Like I stopped using the highlighter because I'm like, it's just going to run out. And I'm not even kidding. Look at UCC. It's all orange. So
wow, that's a lot of Post-it notes, my love.
Well, you know what that's a reflection of? Is that I don't even know how many times did I have the thought, geez, how much effort and time and research did you put into this? Because what you've done is like when a chef reduces something and reduces and reduces and reduces that down to its like neutron star density level, like power. That's what you did with it. It's what you did with this book. There's no fluff in there. Which is amazing.
It's supposed to be the unwritten rules. So I was trying to only write the things that were unwritten, that are like not so obvious.
But right. But there's no fluff. So it's all these the whole book is just a book of practical help. It's like, do this.
I do a lot of say this.
Don't do this. Do this. Don't do this. I did this. Don't do that.
Yeah. Especially don't do that.
And you're really sensitive to everyone involved. So it's I couldn't recommend this. This book is not just for women, as I told you. This is like therapeutic for me. I had a conversation with my trainer this morning about it, like a deep conversation about like what are we paying attention to? How are we promoting these things, these inequity? And I shared with him so many amazing statistics that you've shared in here that blew my mind. Like the probability of promotion, right? Of getting a promotion. So if a man and a woman are being considered for a promotion, and both the man and the woman have accomplished A, B, and C, right?
Yes.
Right. Men are promoted more on estimated potential, and women are promoted more on what the track record they've already proven.
Yes.
That's amazing.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's why there are more Fortune 1500 CEOs called David than there are women of any name.
Women of any name, right? Yeah.
And it's 2021.
Are you angry about this?
Determined.
That's cool. That wasn't
determined
that wasn't
to.
Like, you're determined. That's the energy.
Determined to change it. Yeah. And remember, I guess some women have it really much worse than I had it, right? Ultimately, yes, I had bangs and bruises and I cried in the restroom, but there are women that have it even worse than I did, right? And particularly if, I'm a white, able-bodied, cis woman. So, there are far worse stories than this. And my focus is really on forward, right? I can't change what has happened. I succeeded. Yeah. And so how can we make it better? And how can we raise awareness and consciousness and help women maximize the career accelerators and navigate the decelerators? Because they're real, right? This is not really about fixing women, right? Some of this shit we can't control. Sorry, are we allowed to swear on your podcast?
We should have asked that you strongly here.
Okay,
although as soon as I finished saying that, someone recently sent me this beautiful picture of his 2 young children having breakfast, watching an episode. And I thought, ooh.
Oh. Okay, we'll keep it family friendly.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm determined.
Yeah.
I'm just determined to change it, right? And change comes most effectively from the inside, and it's coming from the outside as well. But my focus is really on, the best way of getting more women senior is to get more women senior.
Yeah, you said that. Who did you write this to? Who are you speaking to as you sat down every day to write and write and write?
To be honest, my clients, the women that are coming behind me, lots of them I coach one-on-one. So this is the same, content that I use one-on-one. And also I think to my daughter, Ellie, who is 21, almost 21 now, and, is now in the process of figuring out her career options and deciding what she wants to do. And, I think it becomes really real then, right? I find for a lot of men, they start to wake up to what is their work environment like? I mean, one of my questions, this isn't it, in the questions for men is, do you work for a company or do you work in a team that you'd want your daughter to work in? So I think as we get to that age where we have children that are coming into the workforce, it becomes just even more real. So that's who I wrote it for.
Yeah. So women who are in leadership roles who aspire to be.
So typically, Chris, in our 20s, we're all kind of thrown in the deep end in the swimming pool when we first start work. The men and the women are all kind of thrashing around and we don't really know what we're doing and our feet aren't on the bottom and we're kind of, bobbing around the surface somewhere. And so women in their 20s, typically are not really my target audience. But then as you go through your 20s, as you start to come into your 30s, we, at that point, sometimes for some women, they're like, oh, why did he get promoted? Right. And then you're taking on bigger projects. And by that stage, you're managing people. And, maybe for some of them, they've started families and the responsibilities are stacking up. Life starts to ask a lot of women in their, mid 30s. And it becomes, for me on my journey, and as I work with women of this age, it becomes at this stage that they're like, hang on a minute, what's happening here? Why are the men getting promoted and why are they the ones that are playing golf and why are they the ones that are going out for beers and why are they the ones that are invited out for dinner? And, and then they're also promoted and getting, the opportunities and getting the visibility and giving the updates and it really starts to work for them. And at that point, it becomes harder. And that's when you need these tools.
Well, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking one of the tools that would be very handy to start practicing at any age is the negotiating skill set, right? And one of the things that I found fascinating is your recommendation on women being conscious of the need to negotiate differently, like a uniquely different negotiation style than men. This is stuff that I would never think about, which is why I was like, man, you're really opening up my eyes to another whole world of experience that as a privileged white man, I have never needed to think about.
So what I find a lot, Chris, is that it's not so much that we have a unique style that only works for women. What happens is the range of styles that are available when you negotiate, from not negotiating at all to aggressive.
Yes.
The styles that are acceptable for women that research shows works are narrower. So what happens is I talk quite a lot about in a lot of behaviors about the tight ropes that women walk, right? So the range of behaviors that I am allowed to exhibit at work compared to you. So let's take it out of negotiation, but just the emotions that we're allowed to express, right? If Chris Doris, senior VP, loses his temper one day, Chris is upset today. Man, be careful. You got to know your stuff, like figure it out. If I lose my temper, then wow, what a bitch. Wrong time of the month. So it's not acceptable for me to express anger in the way that it is for you to.
Which
same with negotiation.
Have more mastery.
Yes.
It requires you to have more awareness and mastery and tact, discipline, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And even more so for women of color, right? The stereotypes, as the stereotypes get stronger, the tightrope gets narrower.
Wow. Yeah. Which is why which is why I love this so much, because you just mentioned, okay, so here's the problem. Now here's how I recommend you address that problem. solution, problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution. It's the whole thing. So it's fantastic. Now, what I was struggling with, of course, was reducing it. I was like thinking, well, this is a podcast. It's only about an hour long. I mean, what I really thought was, can you just read the whole freaking book, please? Because that's what I want to have.
Audible. I did.
Yes. Okay, good. So it's available. Okay. And all that stuff will be in the show notes.
It is.
So when I was struggling and I reached out yesterday, what I asked you was, and I've never done this before, and that's a total compliment, is just give me 3. Like if you were only allowed for some weird cosmic reason share your wisdom and insights based on your experience in the corporate world with women, what are the 3 nuggets? And interestingly, I had narrowed it down to 8. And the 3 you mentioned were in my 8. So let's hit those, can we?
Yeah.
All right, good. So the first one is you entitled Get Visible. Get visible. What do you mean by that?
Visibility is
what's up with
so important. And I think it's particularly important to talk about now that we're all remote and, we live in each other's lives through these tiny little squares, don't we? So
like the one going on right now.
Our ability, or a large square, but, if there's a team of us, 20 of us, then, it's life in little squares. And visibility, I think, is something that women don't do that well anyway. So I'll give you an example. Somebody told me, I think probably 10 years too late in my career, Helen, you have to realize there's visible work and invisible work, and we only get judged on our visible work. And I thought, damn,
yeah,
I should have known that earlier.
I thought when you first pointed out that distinction.
And so what women often do is, if I ask an audience of women, think about the work that you do that's invisible, right? What happens is I get a whole room of, eye rolls, like, oh, they have no idea, right? If you think about the work you do, the value that you add, and the results that you deliver, right? Who doesn't know what's on that list of the people that, the folks that should know that don't know it? So they say, if I left, they'd have to replace me with 2 people. They have no idea. They just think it happens like magic, but it's not really magic. It's a lot of hard work. And so
and plus,
women tend to assume that if they do good work, they will be noticed. And I want to make it really, really clear, like the game doesn't work like that. It is your responsibility to make your invisible work visible.
Yeah. Okay.
And go on. Do you have a question there?
Yes. Let's pick up right on that though. Let's hold that thought, get right back to it, because I'm having a thought, which is like, as I'm hearing this from you, I'm imagining that if I was a woman and had to deal with this, I'm like, God damn it. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, something else on my to-do list.
Like, as if I don't have enough, I got to manage your goddamn biases.
Yep.
So that kind of reaction, I'm pretty certain as a mental coach, ain't going to serve anybody. So like, what's the advice as a coach, as a conscious coach, that you give to women as they have those thoughts arising? They're like, Jesus, I got not even much. What the, how do you coach them to masterfully deal with the facts that this is what's going on, and it requires you to gracefully navigate the circumstances? So
the pivot for me, Chris, because the reason I used to be like, oh, I don't want to do that, was because the thought of doing it was yucky. All right. Because where that leads you is, you have to make your work visible, right? You have to self-promote. I never wanted to do that. That just felt so inauthentic and yucky and just like something else to do. Right. So the pivot for me and the way I work with women is to say, look, I don't want you to think of it as self-promotion, right? I want you to make a list of the people that need to know the stuff that they don't know, right? And then your job is to educate them.
That's a huge distinction right there. Is this right?
It's and faced with that, I'm like, it's my job to just teach them, like update them, tell them, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And that's true. And that's actually true. It's not like a workaround. It's not a rose-colored glasses or silver lining, interpretation. That's like just legit. Like, okay, by virtue of the way things are and have evolved, I need to educate him.
Yes. Them. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And, that's the way the game works, and that's how you play the rules. Okay. And, it's not your job, your boss's job to do that. You have to do it. I don't rely on your boss, because your boss is busy too, right? Male or female.
But what are some points you have? Like, what are some, how do I make myself visible?
So first of all, you make a list and decide, right, who will be in the room or consulted when your next role comes up, right? When your next move or promotion comes up, who'll be there, right? And typically women say, oh, well, my boss and HR. And I'll say, I don't believe that. Try again. Who will be in the room or consulted? That list is likely between 6 and 10 people long.
Oh, wow.
Right. So there'll be other stakeholders. There'll be other people that are asked. Now, make your list of what they know and what they don't know. And then your job is to find time with those folks, right? And another really easy way for me to be able to do that was to ask for advice. So I'd say, hey, Chris, can we meet? I want to ask your advice on, the plans that I have and how they are going to work in your region, right? If you're a regional president.
Okay, well, yes, wait. So who were you asking advice from?
The people on your list, the people that need to be managed.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. And then I sit and talk to you, give you an update, ask for your advice, let you know in general what is happening and what's happening in the world and what's happening in my world in terms of the results that you don't know. And then, we then stay in touch and keep you updated.
Like strategic educating and informing and learning on your part, as opposed to asking.
Yes.
Right.
Because you're asking for advice and giving updates and building a relationship, right? Ultimately, this is about relationship building, isn't it?
I hope it is.
Yeah. The other thing I say is that often women miss those, what I call micro encounters, that have been drastically reduced by Zoom, right? So there are moments in corporate life when you're, I don't know, in an Uber, at the elevator, you come into the meeting room and there's just you and a regional president there, right? And what women typically will do is they'll deflect. So you'll say to me, hey, Helen, how are you? And I'll go, yeah, I'm fine. Beautiful day out there, isn't it? Right? Or talk about the kids or talk about something social. And what I say to women is, don't miss those moments. Right? It's not that you can't talk about the weather, but the first thing I should say to you is, great, thanks. Hey, next month we're coming to you. We're going to ask you for money. That project that we're working on, it's just come through the latest stage of research and we smashed it. So bring your checkbook and then we can go on and talk about other stuff. But those really small encounters we get, don't waste them.
You know who that you just reminded me of with that one?
Oh, Mr. Chandler. Deep bow.
Because you know what? Yeah, right. A moment of silence for the Godfather of coaching. The most lucrative lesson that I ever learned from him, slowing down. You're talking about it right now, is because you're saying don't miss these. What did you call them? Micro opportunities? Micro encounters. And if you do, in order for you to capitalize on them all, you need to master slowing down. Then slow down. And like be in the inquiries. This is what I'm hearing from you. Totally correct me if I'm wrong. Is like be constantly in the inquiry. The next person I cross paths with, how can I further develop relationship, or inform them? I don't know. You tell me, what are the inquiries? Like if you're going to have inquiries open all the time, you're going to slow down to capitalize on these micro encounters. What are the questions that you want to have open so that you can help?
How do I educate them?
Yeah.
Right? And if you're on my list, if I see you and Chris Doris is on my list of stakeholders, and I have invisible work, right? Yeah. As we're walking into that room, oh, Chris is here. Excellent. What can I tell him?
This is so incredibly interesting to me, because like you could hear this as like, wow, this is really manipulative. I'm not hearing it that way. I'm hearing this as like, this is just really strategic mastery.
I don't think it's manipulative. Manipulative is to get somebody to do something they don't want to do. But these people genuinely don't know. So you're just helping them understand the value that you bring.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's super skillful. That's great. Okay. Now, the second one, Was there anything else that you wanted to say on that before, on getting visible, before we move on?
No.
Okay.
No, it's
Okay. The second one was fascinating for me because I had never thought about this distinction before. And the distinction is between mentor and sponsor.
mhm.
I never heard that word. I'd never heard the word sponsor in this context before. You know, I don't work in the well, I work with the corporate world, but I'm not in the corporate world. And I have been so profoundly influenced in such a beautiful way by my late mentor, Jim Myers. And I always refer to him as my mentor. But after I read your book, and specifically the distinction that you create between mentors and sponsors, he was not a mentor. No way. He was like the ultimate of sponsors.
Lucky you.
So, I mean, the ultimate. The dude loved me unconditionally. It was a priority of his to have me succeed. He would call me out aggressively and unapologetically and lovingly. You know, he created opportunity in business for me. He even hosted the first book signing I ever had for my book, my first book. He hosted it, and not only did he host the damn book signing, he had, you know, he catered and had a band there. And before it started, gave me a freaking Mont Blanc pen and said, "Any respectable author has to have a good pen to sign with." So this is just lovely. Like, there's so many stories about this amazing human. And as I read that distinction, I realized I've had mentors, but that was a sponsor. Jim Myers was a sponsor. So can you help the audience understand, first of all, the distinction between mentors and sponsors, and then, like, why is that even in your book? Like, what the importance of having them? And I also loved that you said have three. So anyway, bring it.
Okay, let's talk about the difference. Okay, so fundamentally, the way I see the world, a mentor is someone who talks to you and shares their journey. So they are someone who I describe as at least 2 steps ahead of you on the journey that you want to go on, right?
That's cool. At least 2 steps ahead of you. Yeah, right on.
Yes. And because of that, right, they are a career accelerator, right? Because they've figured it out before. And so they can,
you know, they can tell you.
Marie Forleo says, everything's figure-outable. Right. They can save you time, right? And they can help you shortcut, help you do things better, and really, really help you. But second level career accelerator is a sponsor, because sponsors talk about you when you're not in the room.
I circled that. I don't know what page that's on, but I love that. They talk about you when you're not in the room. There's too many.
They advocate.
It's useless to do this because then I can't find anything. But yeah, no, that's cool. I remember I circled to you, about you, right? Yes. Mentors talk to you about totally unbelievably valuable stuff. And you said second level is sponsors talk about you, like they're one of your chambers of commerce.
And that's why they're second level accelerators. So that's the important thing. That's the difference, right? Okay. So why it's in the book, though, is because typically, by human nature, and including me, right? Typically, we mentor and sponsor, and we look after and we care about the people that remind us of ourselves when we're young. Okay, got that?
Did you write that?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so ashamed. I must have missed that part. Can you repeat that, please?
What that means that we typically mentor and sponsor. So we go back and help and are concerned with the people that remind us of ourselves when we were younger.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah,
right, which is exactly what I'm doing, right? Women in corporate life, right?
Yep.
So what that means, though, as a woman in corporate life, joining a company where all the senior folks are men, right? Or as a person of color, joining a company where all the senior folks are white, right? It means that we are not going to get asked.
Oh.
And so, mentors are useful. That's a written rule, right? That's not an unwritten rule. I knew that. Right. The unwritten part of it for me on my journey was I didn't know how to ask. And what I say in the book is also, I was in my 20s, I was blonde, I had big boobs. I don't think they knew how to ask either.
Okay, so how do we ask? How do women ask?
So how does, like, the approach, I think, is to think really carefully about what the journeys are ahead of you in your career, right? So if mentors are 2 steps ahead of you on a journey, what journey, right? Do you want to be senior in finance? Do you want to work in international? Are you a working mum? You know, do you want to switch careers? Do you want to become an entrepreneur, right? What are those journeys? Again, write it down, right? Get clear. What are the journeys ahead of you? For me, it was getting really senior in marketing, wanting to work abroad, and wanting to do that and travel with my kids and be a mum. So those were my 3. And I say 3, okay, conceptually 3, because, you know, we're busy. So working out, getting clear what those pathways are, and then saying to yourself, okay, who can help me, right? Who's 2 steps ahead of me on this journey? And then going to ask them. And the ask is really important, right? Chris, I really admire how you've written so many books and you've built this amazing platform. I'd love your advice on that, because I'm looking to build a platform for the unwritten rules of women's leadership. Could you spare me a few minutes, and can we have a Zoom coffee and talk about that? I'd love your advice, please.
So would you advise someone to, okay, so that's an example of the do this. Would
Say
the
this.
following be an example of the don't do this? Hi, could you be my mentor?
Yes.
Yes, that would be don't do.
That would be don't do that, would it? I mean, to be honest,
Why?
unless you
Let's break it
already
down,
have
Mm,
a deep personal relationship with that
gotcha,
person
gotcha.
already.
Right,
And
right.
even then, to be honest, would you be my mentor for what? It's kind of weird, right? So mentor for what? Like, if I knew you really well, I'm like, hey, Chris, I need some mentorship on, you know, writing books. Can you help me out? And you'd probably say yes. But again, the
Right.
clearer and the cleaner you can make it, the easier it is for them to say yes.
Okay. Then how does someone get a sponsor? Or does a mentor evolve into a sponsor?
Okay. So key principle: people support what they help to build psychologically, right?
People, yeah, okay, yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah. Got it.
Which is why you can get kids to eat vegetables in their food if they've helped to cook the dinner and they've chopped the vegetables. Okay, so that is subconscious. So the sponsor, the source of sponsors, right, is somewhat different, right? When a sponsor talks about you when you're not in the room, when they advocate for you, they're in a way risking part of their brand equity to say, you know, I think Chris would be great for this conference keynote, right? If you show up and you're not great, they look bad, don't they?
Yeah.
So they're taking a risk, you know, like there's a job in international, right? We need a marketing director for the Middle East. Helen would be great for that. Somebody did that for me, but they have to really know you. They have to trust you. So I think you don't ask for sponsorship, you earn it.
Yeah,
You earn it, right? And so sources of sponsors are usually ex-bosses, ex-senior folks that know you really well. And again, if you've been, you know, making your invisible work visible and building those relationships and, you know, getting advice and giving them updates, then they will know you. And they're, you know, inevitably they're going to say at some point, you know, what do you want to do? What's your next role, Helen? And I say, I'd really like to work abroad. I'd like to run a region. Right? Then they're in some talent review somewhere else, and you know, who's going to run the Middle East? Who's going to be marketing director for the Middle East? Oh, I think Helen. Is she on the list? Oh no, she's not. Let's talk to Helen. I know she wants to do that. That is earned. So it's ex-bosses, other senior folks that you've built a relationship with, and mentors. So mentors are a potential source of sponsors. But remember, not all mentors have to be in your company, right? So sometimes they're not, right? Especially if you're, you know, wanting a career change. But I'll tell you a true story though, of the impact of having a mentor. I have a client that I was working with, and I said to her, who are your mentors? And she said, I don't know. I mean, she was young, Latina, enormously talented. And she said, I don't know. So we did that exercise, and she wanted to be senior in media. So she went and asked, exactly like I've just described, a senior guy in the media organization that she worked for if he would mentor her. Had the discussion about whatever aspect she wanted advice on. And then he said to her at the end, what job grade are you? She told him. And he said, how much are you paid? And she told him. And he said, you're underpaid. Go and talk to HR and tell them that you want a pay rise. Tell them that you want to be at least the mean, given your performance reviews, of that pay grade. So she said, okay. And she went and literally repeated what he told her. She got a $30,000 pay raise. True story.
Wow. That's amazing.
So
and very
they
believable.
Really are.
Oh
they
yeah.
really are career accelerators.
No, I mean, I can give I can give testimonial to that. I never want to be without a mentor. My very first mentor taught me as a teenager to always have mentorship.
And you're the kind of guy though that gets asked.
Say more about that.
Because you're white, you're handsome, you're outgoing, you're sporty. Like, you probably remind a lot of senior guys of them when they were younger.
I actually, I would never challenge that. Well, especially the handsome part. Thank you for that. I talk about Jim Myers as my mentor, and I'll refer to him as my sponsor now, moving forward. And I do believe, and I hope that there's value in this piece for anyone in the audience listening or watching, that I take some credit for co-creating that, because I remember distinctly when I was starting my practice, since like 26 years ago, I didn't have any clients. I was confused and scared, and I didn't have any leaders. I didn't have any mentors. I'd moved away from where I grew up. I didn't know anybody out here in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
So I had no mentorship whatsoever. And I said, I want that. And I made a declaration that I will create that.
Great.
And I went out into the world and I let people know that is what I'm, what are you up to? I'm creating a mentor. And I had clarity on who I wanted that to be. And sure enough, he showed up.
Fantastic. Yes.
Now,
so, I mean, you had to do it too. And, asking for advice. I hope you didn't show up on the first day and say, can you be my mentor? But, can you give me advice? No, I didn't.
It was a breakfast. So it was that kind of guy. So the guy who I was at a networking meeting. It was a really cool high-end networking event here in Arizona called the Enterprise Network. And talking to a dude, PhD guy in psych. So I'm like, hey, what's up? And he was asking me, he took real interest in what I was saying. So maybe that's the part where he was seeing the little him and me. And he said, let's go play golf. And that's when he,
there you go.
Because I told him I work with golfers. I want to train golfers' minds. And he goes, well, I play golf. And he said, let's go play. And then that's when he got to know me. So I told him, I really need a mentor. And he said, well, I know the perfect guy for you. And he arranged a breakfast meeting and we hit it off instantly. And the point though is really the biggest point though of this tiny little vignette is the immeasurable value. I don't want to think about what my life would have been like without that mentor sponsorship.
And the other thing I talk to women about though, Chris, is I think for so many of us, when we benefit from this, I think something to reflect on is, who can you help? Who can you mentor and who can you sponsor? Who are you 2 steps ahead of? Right? I'm a big proponent of sisterhood and of helping other women rise, as lifting other women as you rise. Mm-hmm. And so who are you 2 steps ahead of? Who are you taking notice of? If you made a list of who is on your list, right, could you make it broader? Right? Could you mentor women? Could you mentor people of color? Right? Mentor people that maybe don't look, really like you when you were young, and just bring mindfulness to it to help others.
That's beautiful. And there's such reward in that.
Yeah, isn't there? I mean, really,
sure.
At the end of it, that will be part of our legacy, won't it?
Right. And that is deeply meaningful.
Yes.
The first thing that I noticed about your book that grabbed my attention, rather, was in reading through the table of contents.
Mm-hmm. She says, opening the table of contents.
And the first thing that I noticed, you can't tell because there's other stuff that I highlighted later, but it was the first thing that I highlighted. It's at the very bottom of the table of contents.
Leaky language.
Leaky
Avoid
language.
using leaky language.
Leaky language. And I said, oh, I totally want to know what, I think I might know what you mean by that. And I kind of knew. But now I know. Can you have everybody else know, please?
Leaky language is the language that we use that gives away our power, that leaks away our power. And it's things like just, could I just, right? Things like, could I possibly? Things like, it's probably not a great idea, but.
Yeah, yes, let's slow this part down. Yeah, right. Like, what would inspire someone? Let's get into the psychology of this. What would inspire someone? See that there it is right here. It's like, it may not be a good idea, but there's a second one right there, right? Like it says, but no,
sorry is another big one. Sorry to suggest this.
Let's get to that.
Sorry to interrupt.
I definitely want to talk about this, the whole sorry thing. But like, what would inspire someone, even if it seems obvious here in the context of this conversation, to preface an idea or comment with that leak, with that power leak preface sentence?
That they're caretaking the other person and wanting to dilute it so it doesn't show up as too much of a challenge. And some of that as well is the kind of good girl stereotype and wanting to walk that tightrope of, behaviorally acceptable language that doesn't, push your buttons.
And the paradox is you're using that language thinking it's serving you, and when in fact
it's
not at all.
No.
Okay, so all right, so what are some more examples? I just want to sorry. Let's talk about the sorry. Prefacing a comment with sorry.
Yeah, look for it now, right? There's a great Pantene commercial which is called Sorry, and it just shows so many examples of how women say sorry. You say sorry for things that are like not their fault, right? Sorry to interrupt. Sorry, I'm late. Sorry to suggest this. All of it. Sorry to take your time. And fine, as I say in the book, if you knock into someone and spill their coffee all over them, I'm not saying you can't ever apologize, right? Apologies absolutely have their place, but I think just bring mindfulness to it in what you write and in what you say, and maybe get a buddy to watch you and listen to you, because you'll be amazed how much we overuse them. And I say to women, next time you write an email and you write just a quick note, and you catch yourself typing JUST, I want you to go backspace, 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 backspace. Get rid of it. The sentence is whole and complete without it. Right? Writing you a note.
That's huge. How did you become conscious of your use of that kind of leaky language?
I guess that I heard it in other women.
And you were like, ugh.
Oh, don't give up your space, right?
Right.
The way we sit, the way we speak, just come on, own it.
Yeah.
You're here for a reason, right? You're here because you're the expert. You're here because, you probably know more on this subject than the senior leader that you're talking to.
And
right?
the last thing in the world that this company needs you to be is apologetic for your brilliance.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Don't hide your light.
Yeah. So, is it cool with you if I read the 11 questions?
Sure.
We don't need to get into them, but I think there's value because I reflected on each of them, and there was great value for me as a man. So the it'll be easier for me to read it in the table of contents. I really love the way you organize this. So your afterword is questions for men who want to help. I think that was also strategic because it wasn't like questions men you guys need to ask your freaking selves. Although it could have been. And I'm just going to read.
I think, to be honest, if they're reading this book, then the likelihood is they do want to help. The likelihood is they're not actually part of the problem.
Yeah, I don't think so. Exactly. I think that's a pretty damn safe assumption. Do you unintentionally make inappropriate comments? So what I'm doing right now is I'm just going to read these and make a pause. I'm speaking to the men who are listening and are watching this. Because I want you to have the same, at least part of the same experience that I had when I read the book. Are you a leader you'd want your daughter to work for?
Yes. And if not, why not?
Why not? Oof, let's just pause on that. Man, wow. Like this is like humble down. You don't have to say anything out loud to anybody, but get clean with it. Yeah. And then do something about it. Do you listen carefully? Just for a second. Somebody that doesn't probably won't know that.
That men interrupt twice as often as women, and 3/4 of the time they interrupt women. It's amazing how much. 3/4 of the time men interrupt women.
How many times did I interrupt you today? This freaking.
Don't worry. But again, bringing awareness to it, right?
Yep.
And catching other men. We'll come to the complicit in a minute. Catching other men do it. Let her finish.
Right on. Do you hold women to a different standard?
Yes. So there's a great example in here of Heidi Rosen and Howard Rosen showing two groups of people the same resume, exactly the same resume, and how both were viewed as equally competent. And Howard was considered likable, and Heidi was considered selfish and the type of person you wouldn't want to hire or work for. Same resume. That's the unconscious bias.
Wow.
So again, and especially in a talent discussion, well, she's aggressive, or I sometimes say to leaders, listen to what was just said and say, would you say that if instead of you were talking about Helen, would you say it if you were talking about Harry? Would you say that? So that's holding them to a different standard.
What standards do you hold other men to?
Yes. And so it is so much more effective when men stand up to other men, right? So I say, like, don't be complicit, right? Say things like, let her finish. That's not cool.
Right.
That's sexist.
Right.
Speak up.
Right.
Be an ally.
Right on. Do you mansplain? I had to Google that word.
Really?
Yeah, I'm behind the times. I'm a little slow on the uptake.
Right. So men explaining the blindingly obvious to women that are much more qualified than them.
That is the definition of it. Is a man thinking they're explaining something to a woman that's painfully obvious already to them because of the assumption the man is making, which is that she wouldn't know this.
Yeah.
Is it condescending?
So I say in the book, I've had finance managers explain marketing to me when I was the global vice president of marketing. I'm like, thank you.
Will hashtag Me Too stop men from helping women? That's an interesting question.
And the research shows that to some extent it has. They are
paranoid.
Yeah, that's right. They're more careful. And so, what I say is, like, please don't, because your help makes an enormous difference. But obviously, do it in a clean and healthy way.
Who do you mentor? Who do you sponsor? We talked about those. Finally,
we talked about that.
Are you amplifying women's voices? Wanted to show you something. This just came up. As you know how Facebook shows you memories?
Mm-hmm.
Just came up the other day.
Oh, that was such a great dinner. Route 57 in New York.
Yes, Route 57, that's exactly right.
Yes.
That's a heck of a tribe right there.
That is some awesome people.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Including Devon.
Yes, Devin's right there. That's right. Wearing a goat shirt, the greatest of all time. This is what his shirt is.
Yes.
Good stuff.
Lovely.
All right. So Helen, you're an absolute powerhouse. I love that I got to share you with the Tough Talks tribe. And I would love for you to answer this last question, which is, how can women work with you?
So, in a number of different ways. So right now and right here, right now, they can tune into the podcast, The Unwritten Rules of Women's Leadership. They can buy my book on Amazon or Audible, or wherever you buy audiobooks. And then I'm launching, actually, I just recorded it. I'm about to launch The Unwritten Rules of Women's Leadership as a course. So a 6-month course delivered on video with group coaching, which is all the stuff that I, work with my one-on-one clients, but delivered in a group setting, and therefore much more affordable. So that's all on the website. And then, I do coach one-on-one, but I don't have many slots.
So what was that last part?
I coach one-on-one as well for executive women, but I really don't have many slots.
Of course. How could you? So you said it's all on the website. So for those who don't end up reading the show notes, can you tell them the website?
Yes. www.theunwrittenrules.com.
And that's where they can find out all the information about the course, so we're recording. I think by the time that this interview goes live, I'm thinking your course might be available. Do you have an idea of when your course is available? April.
We're going to be starting and having it available from April.
The beginning of April?
Probably middle to end, actually.
So we're recording this in mid-March, and this will probably go live right around mid-April. So this is great timing. Mm-hmm. Perfect. And I'll include all those details in the show notes.
Fantastic.
This has been a blast and a really like a profound educational experience for me. This is a way to go, my friend.
Thank you,
way to go. And thank you so much for your time and your wisdom today. And I can't wait to see you live next time I come down to South Carolina.
Or New York.
Or New York.
Yeah. Oh, I both. I still got my apartment in New York.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Good for you. Right on. That's beautiful. All right. Cool. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Stevie.
I wanted to clarify something that I don't think I articulated it correctly at the very end of the interview. Regardless of whether or not her course has launched by the time this interview goes live, you can still sign up for the course. I think that when this goes live, it's going to coincide almost perfectly with her course opening or launch, but you don't need to wait for that. So whenever you're seeing this, you can go to the website, which is theunwrittenrules.com, theunwrittenrules.com, or unwrittenrules.com/course. Or you can just go to unwrittenrules.com and you'll see that the course is one of the tabs, and you can learn all about it. Lots of detail, what's included, and you can sign up for it there. She's a hell of a powerhouse, isn't she? I knew it as soon as I met her. I met her years ago in one of Steve Chandler's coaching schools, and of course, instantly, how do you not fall in love with her? She's such a sweetheart and a brilliant wizard. So this book is just so incredible. I really do, encourage you strongly to get, again, it's also entitled The Unwritten Rules of Women's Leadership. So I sat down to prepare. I didn't think that I was going to get that absorbed, but it's just so many nuggets of value. So check it out. Check her out. Follow her up. I put all of her links and social links in the show notes. So thanks again for tuning in. And again, if you're digging it, please share it. I want to grow the tribe, the Tough Talks tribe. It's part of it is my legacy, really, is my content. And this is one of the forms of that. So it really would mean the world to me if you would like and share or create a review or give it a rating. Thanks so much. All right. Until next time, create miracles.